can't keep track of it. So I appreciate your comments with respect to hiring managers. It actually makes me almost sick to my stomach, but because that's, when you look at recruiting, it's so many problems. Oh my God, if it wasn't for hiring managers, this would be such an, it wouldn't be an easy job, but it would certainly be a different job. And to me, it's many of it's hiring managers. We don't make the decision; they make the decision. So I look at all that list there, and I think about, for the last 10 or 12 years, I've been going to recruiting events, whether they're Talent Connect at LinkedIn, Kennedy had some, Recruiting had some, OnRec had some, ERE had them. Been going, for years around the world, and never do they address the hiring manager. And they make the job much tougher than it needs to be, in my mind. So you got to be a pretty strong-willed recruiter to deal with that and do searches over again. And I think I'd almost say that's why I even got into this training business, was to prevent having to do searches multiple times. So let's kind of go through what we're going to talk about today. We do have people coming in as we now speak, so I'll kind of slow down a little bit to get everybody in here. But and JJ is going to be, thank God for JJ, because I couldn't do this without her. She's going to be monitoring some of the questions. So JJ, if you see anything that's really insightful or pithy, make sure you kind of clap or yell or do something to get my attention.
You got it.
However, Roger, no. I'd say even take it from Roger. He's an old friend of mine. So let's kind of talk about what we're going to talk about in the coaching taming agenda, just so you kind of understand where we're going here and what we're trying to do. First, I want to go into my golden rule, and I'm going to explain it. But truthfully, if you really have the ear of the hiring manager, you can present 3 to 4 prospects in 72 hours using a tool like LinkedIn Recruiter. You can't, it takes probably 2 or 3 times longer than that without LinkedIn Recruiter, but it's still, the idea is very quickly you should be able to present prospects. And I'll explain what prospects are. They're different than candidates. And then I have this other rule, is if the hiring manager needs to see more than 4 candidates before he or she hires someone, you have a big problem, so don't send any more candidates in. That is those 2 rules are pretty cool. If you get to that, you'll actually have some great success. Of course, neither of those are necessarily easy to do. Particularly when I want to talk about talent scarcity. It's the talent scarcity. Just say yes or no. I like to just see the sense. But don't put yes or no until I ask the question. Even if you're real proactive, wait to the end of the question. I didn't send the question in yet. I already see a yes coming in here. How many of you exist in a talent scarcity world where the demand for talent is greater than the supply? Talent scarcity, there aren't enough candidates to go around, so you got to really work hard to get them. A talent surplus is, hey, you got plenty of good candidates and you just got to weed out the weak. So how many of you have talent scarcity? Say yes or no. Yeah, cutting edge technique, yeah, I certainly don't have them. So Carolyn's got a few. So it's, either one is different. They're both appropriate if given true. The problem is most people apply a talent surplus mentality in the talent scarcity world, and that kills you. And you never make your numbers hit, and you just go around in circles. So here's what you got to do in a talent, well, even in the talent surplus world, you still got to do it. You got to redefine the job. You got to redefine the assessment. You got to redefine the candidate. I mean, and we're going to show you at least briefly how to redefine everything. You got, in some way, you actually control everything. In fact, I'm going to give you this other, now I realize why I wanted to put this other rule in here. Very early on when I was a young engineer, I really was an engineer, my first boss said, Lou, I'm going to teach you all about engineering and you're going to learn it. He said there's 3 rules you have to know. Force equals MA, E equals MC squared, and you can't push on a rope. He said, I want you to come back and tell me in a week what those 3 things mean. Well, I got the first 2 in a day. I mean, that was pretty obvious. Pushing on a rope, I didn't quite get. It took me about 5 years to figure. I don't know. I still figured it out. The idea is, you don't have a lot of power. You have to influence people, and in some way, that's what you guys have to do with your hiring manager. We have no power, so we don't make the decision. But if we don't control the process somehow, we never get there. We go around in circles. So that's what I want to talk about: is what can you do in the world, a talent scarcity world, to put some metrics around it, and how do you redefine the process? So that's where we're going here. So let me kind of just go through the golden rules for recruiting, just some of them. I call it the trifecta of recruiter performance. And this is obviously the trifecta: maximum quality, minimum cost, and the shortest amount of time. Now, let me just ask you one question, which is pretty obvious here. Why do managers take so long to make a decision? Just what do you think? Why do hiring managers take so long to make? Because they screw up at the shortest time. And if it takes too long, you can't have minimum cost because you're spending too much time doing it over again. So why do managers take so long? Yeah, I would say, yeah, right. They're looking for that's what they're looking for. The next person, it's the best. So if you don't define what they're looking for before you look, they're never going to find it. Then it's problematic. So I'll say that again. The real reason is they don't know what they're looking for. So in my personal opinion, when I don't take a search unless they do know what they're looking for, and I help them define what they're looking for. Now you got to help them once you define what they're looking for. You got to help make sure they make the right assessment. But if you don't know what they're looking for, it doesn't matter. So to me, that's really at the root cause. That's the problem. So if you know what you're looking for, I really truly believe you can find a slate of 3 to 4 qualified people and interested prospects in 72 hours. We have a whole 8-hour class, LinkedIn master class on how to do that. So that's number one. Number two, rather than just sending more candidates out if they need to see more than 4, obviously they don't know what they're looking for. So why would you keep on looking for something you don't know what you're looking for? That's why I say stop the process. Now, I was in Russia 3 weeks ago at their fastest growing tech company, spent a week with them. I started Monday morning, last week in June, and said, here's a new rule we have for, and I said it very slowly because they had it, many of them all of them spoke English, but I had to speak it there. I said, we're going to do, and this was 30 hiring leaders, if you need to see more than 4 people per search, we're going to stop. And I said, how many of you had open assignments? And it was growing very, very fast, so all of them raised their hand. How many of you need to see more than 4 people for those assignments? They all raised their hand. I said, well, by Friday, we're going to stop that. We're not doing it anymore. So I spent 4 hours defining how we're going to define the work, and I worked with each group. There was about 7 groups with 2 to 3 hours. And at the end, then on Friday night, when last time together, I said, what's the most important thing you heard all week? Stop when you have to see more than 4 candidates because something's wrong. They all said it in English. Stop. Now here's the third rule. And it's stupid. It's almost as stupid as you can't put it on a string, but it's as important as all of them. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And when you don't know where you're going to go in curves. I'll go back. If you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to go backwards, or you're going to go sideways. So the shortest thing between 2 points is a straight line. And the shortest distance is knowing what you're looking for. So I want to kind of get into that. So I want to kind of zoom out to 20,000 feet and look down on your search process. Maybe it's 5,000 feet so you can see it. Because I'm going to see when you start thinking about this straight line concept, you'll see very clearly where the problems are. So I want to kind of look at, you can put the hiring decision concepts into 4 big giant buckets of stuff. These are all decisions. Everything happens from the candidate, from you, from advertising, 4 big buckets. One bucket is what I call before day 1 bucket. This is all the stuff we typically have in a job description. The skills, experience, what the person has to have, must have, their academics, their competencies. This is all before day 1. This is not anything to do with the work. This is what the candidate needs to have. We then have day 1 stuff, which is what the candidate gets the day they start. The title, they get a title. They get a company, they get a location, they get some money, and they get a list of responsibilities. But now we have year 1. Year 1 is the work they actually do, the impact they actually make, what they can learn, what they can do, who's on the team, and the total package, all this other stuff, bonus, this stuff, which is a little complicated to explain, total rewards. Then you have beyond year 1, which is if they do year 1 real well, they have long-term growth. They can make a bigger impact. They can become better. They can get promoted. They can get on bigger projects. It also has this long-term compensation component. And the percent possible increase would be growing faster. So look at those big 4 buckets. And I'm going to ask you a question. What's the emphasis that you guys put on your job descriptions in all your postings online? What do you emphasize clearly online? So just look at, if you read your online job postings, what do you see? And one person says day 1, day 1. I actually think they're before day 1. I think it's before day 1. You got all this stuff. You got to have 5 years of this, 3 years of this, 2 years of this. You don't put the title. You might put the title in there in the company, and you don't put the dollars, but you certainly have, it certainly emphasizes before day. Okay, now I want you to think about the best people you've ever hired. The best people you've ever hired. What do they emphasize on this? So if the person is going to accept the job, what do the best people emphasize when they decide to take a job? One beyond year one. Yeah, it's year one and beyond year one. Let's be real frank, guys. A good person, I take that. I want to do that work. I want to do it with that team, and if I do it well, I become this. So right away, we're mixing and matching the wrong stuff. We're looking for people using before day one and day one criteria when the people really are not interested in that. They're not interested in before day one. So what you've done is you forced people who have an interest in day one and also would be interested in this. But think about all the great people who actually would be interested in before day one and year one and beyond year one and never even have a chance. Now, so let's think about it. We do advertise, and you recruiters, guys, you phone screen because your manager said on before day one and day one criteria. You phone screen on that. You advertise on that. And if people don't pass that filter, you never even see them. Now, candidates, even if you call a passive candidate up, they always ask, hey, tell me what's day one. What's day one about? And they opt out for the wrong reasons too. So you've got to, and we did this yesterday in our LinkedIn class. I said, you know, when a candidate calls me up and said, tell me about what's day one. I said, before we get into day one, I want to ask you a question. Think about the work that gave you the great deal of personal satisfaction. Was it the job, the title, location, or was it the actual work you were doing? So it was always that. So that I get them to think about year one and beyond. If this job really offered a career move and year one was great and beyond year was great, wouldn't it make sense to talk 5 or 10 minutes? Well, you have to bridge that gap. You got to get candidates to start thinking year one and beyond year one, and their natural tendency is to think day one. And your natural tendency as a company is to post before day one and screen on day one. So you've set yourself up into a box that's inappropriate. Candidates thinking acceptance, you're thinking the wrong stuff. So we got a mismatch here. We got to realign. That's why I talk about this being linear. We got to focus on what people want. Let's go to the straight line. Let's define year one and advertise year one. Let's go straight line. But now we have moment one, which is an article I wrote on ERE today about controlling moment one. We make huge judgments about whether we like people or not. People look a little different. They might be a little shorter, a little taller. They're not as prepared as we kind of like. We give them, oh, they can't be any good. On the other hand, someone who looks great, sounds great, could be totally incompetent, but we give that person an easier ride. And how we interview and assess is kind of problematic too. So we got some issues there. And what the result is, what do we got? And I'm going to contend, thinking that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Let's define year one, beyond year one. Let's get managers to buy into year one and beyond year one. Let's advertise on beyond year one and year one. Let's see if candidates can do the work that's required in year one, beyond year one. That's my straight line. Because if you don't do it, you're just going to go around in circles. Now, part of it is definitely you can't do it alone. That's the issue. You do need to do it with a hiring manager. So let's kind of talk a little bit about this whole concept of how you pull it off. First, I want to kind of just give you my checklist. This is a course. I have 2 full classes. We record boot camp and LinkedIn masterclass, and we also have another class we're launching at the end of this month, which is the recruiter hiring manager process. This is the one that this is also the process we implemented in Russia with every single manager. They all 100% bought into it. In fact, we've done it with a bunch of companies in the U.S. too. So so it's going to be a little bit checky. And I'm not, obviously I can't today go through all the pieces of it, but let me just give you my checklist. My shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line checklist, and the partnership with the hiring manager. First, we're going to define the job, not the skills needed, the work, year one and year one and beyond, and who's the ideal candidate. We're going to determine the employee value proposition, which is really going to emphasize beyond year one. Why would a good candidate want this work? Some of the best parts of year one and beyond year one. We're then going to develop a sourcing and an advertising plan, find out where these great people hang around, who they know, who to look for. We're going to really figure out, we're going to customize it for that job. We're not going to just use this boilerplate and try it post, scattergun, which most people do. Let's be real frank, guys. You take a shotgun and you post it everywhere. That's as unlinear as you can get. I'm going to laser focus on the people who know these people and where these people hang out, and I'm going to find them that way. I'm going to write year one plus messages, year one and beyond messages. It's going to compel them. It's not going to be, the emphasis is not going to be on skills or day one. It's going to be on year one and beyond. I'm going to advertise that kind of stuff. And develop my target list. I tend to use LinkedIn, so I trained in that, and I've got the access to it, and it's a great tool. Why would you not use it? To me, it's a remarkable tool. I then contact and network with these people. I got 3 minutes to convert that job into a career move. I get concessions at each step with passive candidates. I phone screen them. I get people from go to no to maybe. That's all I really want my first call. I engage my hiring manager to go from an exploratory phone to go from maybe to a yes. And then we bring the candidate in on a full interview and a group assessment, and we negotiate and hire the person. That's my basic process. And when I do it, when I find candidates or companies that exceed the 3 to 4 candidates to get hired metric, I absolutely know there's something wrong in that process. Just know it. And I've never found a situation where it wasn't. Well, maybe one. There was one project manager in Russia, only because it was, so that's why I'm thinking about it, because it was just 2 weeks ago. He had a major database of European project managers, product managers, and he started out with 1,000. He did this twice a month. Started with 1,000, down to 100, sent emails to that, phone screen 20, brought 5 or 6 in, and hired one every other time. He said, it's unbelievable. I spent 30 hours a week on this out of an 80-hour week. It's just unbelievable. I said, well, let's sort out the starting point, 1,000. Let's just look at them. I couldn't, they're obviously in all different languages. This guy spoke about 5. I said, just pick out 50, 60 people at random from this whole database who have degrees. I said, there was nobody any good. So why are we using the database? It was a bad database. So whatever it is, you got to figure out, are the tools you're using even have the right stuff in it? We got to get a different tool for that issue. But it's always when you stop and think about what's wrong, you discover what's wrong. But if you keep on doing the same thing, you don't get better. And that to me, so if I had to just say this whole course is about this issue right there. If you need to see more than 3 or 4 candidates per hire, you got a problem. Now let me just say, if you're doing high volume surplus, or you're looking for a call center, I would say that's probably 1 to 2. If you really have your act together, you're going after, it's one out of 2. You wouldn't need to see, you got your metric, you got the figured out, it's probably 1 to 2. If it's a medium level search, it's probably 2 to 3 where the metric would be. But if you're doing a passive candidate search, and you need to see more than 4 people, something's wrong. Either there is something wrong. You got to figure out what it is. Let's use this checklist in the background just so you have it there. I'm going to cover some of these things, but the point really is all those things are the stars. You do need the engagement of a hiring manager. You cannot do it alone. So that, so that might be another problem. Hey, if you're working on your own without knowing the job, you can't even talk to the hiring manager, boy, you're pushing the rock uphill. You'll get a little bit better, but you're still, it's not direct enough. If the recruiter and the hiring manager and the sourcer aren't all on the same page, how do you get there? When I take an assignment, I have my senior researcher always with me, and I do some searches, not a lot. She's always with me when I do the intake meeting. She asks questions. We're all in point. She knows my 72-hour rule. We go on LinkedIn Recruiter. We find the right people. We clone the right people. We have a list within an hour and a half after taking an assignment of 20 to 30 people. We start calling them. And we start texting them. We start emailing them. And within 24 hours, we're starting to actually interview candidates and getting a prospect. A prospect, let me just define that, and I'm going to see if there's any questions. A prospect is a person who is qualified for the job and is more than open to have a 30 to 40-minute exploratory meeting with the hiring manager. That's a prospect. You probably need to do, if the job is really worthy and you've done your job, you might be able to get, well, probably not. You probably have to do that twice, get 2 groups of 3 to 4 prospects to get a short list of 3 to 4 serious candidates who said, yes, I'm interested, I want to go in for a full interview. I'm not going to get to that today. I just want to, there are 2 separate, a prospect is not a candidate. So I'm talking about candidates who agreed to go through the interview, has been interviewed, and somehow they all fall out. Either they don't take the offer, they opt out somewhere in between, or you decide to exclude the candidate. There's something wrong there. So any thoughts, comments, and questions about that? Because I want to kind of say the real issue is step 1, and I want to I want to kind of walk through that, define the job, and we'll find some ideal candidates. But any thoughts, comments, or questions? I know nothing has come in, JJ, in the last minute or two. Now, why does somebody said, Catherine says, does not flow with OFCCP? Why do you say that it does not, Catherine? Because that's not true. I'm working with Alyssa Horvath. If you look her up on LinkedIn, she's the senior partner at Littler Mendelson, and she does say exactly falls through with OFCCP. You have to have objective criteria. You have to report on objective criteria. There's nothing what I have said that would not do that, and she would say that they're all internet applicants. I'm actually working with absolutely the #1 who litigates for major Fortune 50 companies. Yeah, but yes, but it also says they have to follow your process. So they have to have an interest in your job, but you have to make sure your process ties with that. So Catherine, I would actually suggest that you might want to talk to Alyssa and just look on her LinkedIn profile. She'll be happy to chat with you. Yeah, well, they're leads. They're not prospects, right? So this is just to give everyone a sense. I'm having a little conversation with Catherine here. This is a full OFCCP authorized process. Objective criteria, we do all the reporting. When it's full internet, there's not one thing that would violate OFCCP or EEO or affirmative action process whatsoever. It's a different process. There's no law. The OFCCP doesn't say you have to, a candidate has to submit a resume. No law that says that anyway. We just assume that's the law. But let me kind of redefine the job so that Catherine has a sense of where we're going here. And I appreciate the comments, but we definitely, obviously, I have to make sure that it meets OFCC requirements, and she's on our advisory team, Alyssa Horvath. H-O-R-V-A-T-H. You can look her up on LinkedIn right now and connect with her if you'd like and ask what she thinks. But here's what I think, is I think the real problem is that most companies use job descriptions to define the ideal candidate, internet applicant. I do not use those because they don't define it. Let me just ask you a simple question. Well, first off, let me ask you this, and this is, everybody answer this question. Have you ever met a person who has all the skills listed on the job description who's not a top performer? That's the easy question. You've met a person who has all the skills in the job description who's not a top performer. So Debbie says no. Cynthia says no. So I'll say that again. So maybe I should restate that. Are we guaranteed if someone has all the skills on the job description that they'll be a top performer? The answer to that is no. So I apologize. I misstated the question. Yeah, skills don't determine performance. Now let me ask you another question. Have you ever met someone who, I'll restate this properly, this is why I want to make sure I get it right here. Have you ever met someone who is a top performer who doesn't have all the skills? They are a top performer who don't have all, of course. In fact, they're all the people we promote. That's why the OFCC using a job description is actually a flawed, illegal process, guys. I know it's OFCC compliant, but it's really not objective. It's not done by a job analysis, so it's not objective. On the other hand, if your performance profile, which defines the ideal job, and that's how I take my work, is when I go into a hiring manager, say, what does the person need to do to be considered successful? What is the objective criteria that this person needs to do? They got to reduce costs. They got to grow sales. They got to build a team. So I focus on what the real job is. Tell me what the person needs to do. This is year one and beyond year one. This is year one. This is what they got to do in year one. This is the real work they've got to do. And when you think about it, that's primary. That's what they've got to do. That's year one. Skills are secondary. You can have all the skills and not be a top performer, and you can be a top performer. You can have all the skills and not be a top performer, and you can be a top performer and not have all the skills. So obviously it's another indirect measure. And we're actually working with the government and suggesting that job descriptions are actually illegal. Because if you can find any person who can do the work who doesn't have those skills, they are flawed objective criteria. On the other hand, the stuff in the blue is purely objective. You're assessing everybody, old or young, black or white, green or yellow, physically challenged or not. Doesn't matter what religion or race they are. If they can do that work, they deserve an opportunity. I'm going to contend that a job description actually filters out people in an invalid way. However, but you cannot compromise on the performance profile. You have to define the work. And this is critical when you're taming a hiring manager. You have to define the work. So let me kind of just define how I would do it. When I talk to a hiring manager, I tell them we're going to define the work. We're going to define success, and we will not compromise on success. I go through everything on the job description right here. Okay, you said 7 years of experience. You need 7 years of experience. What are they going to do with that 7 years of experience? Oh, they're going to design a new circuit. They're going to launch a new product line. They're going to do this. And I just asked this question. And you can, let's assume you're a hiring manager and I ask you this question. You take your toughest requirement on the job description and I convert what they need to have, 7 years of something, into what do they do with that? So imagine you're the hiring manager and I ask you this question. If I can find someone who can do that work and do it extremely well, and they don't have exactly 7 years, maybe they got 3 or 4 years, they obviously have to have enough experience to do it, but I don't know how much it is, would you at least see the person, if the person's really a top-notch person, can do that work? What percent of hiring managers do you think would say yes to that? They'd at least see the person. Didn't say hire, just see the person. Yeah, it's usually 90 to 95%. There's always a few that just, oh no, I can't do it, I'm afraid. Well, you're not going to change those people. But it's usually 90% or more. It was 100% in Russia. I asked exactly the same question. Of course, it was like, what are you asking me that question for? Yeah, nearly. I mean, it was. Then you got to create. I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit. I just want to give you the sense is I focus on objective criteria, not direct objective criteria, not indirect secondary criteria. Having 5 years of this, an academic background, even though the OFCCP accepts that, it's really not objective. What we've done with Alyssa, with Littler Mendelsohn, is, hey, is this objective, the stuff in the blue? So I'll even ask Kathleen, is that objective, that performance profile? Is that objective? I mean, that's really the question I have. Of course it's objective. I mean, it's done by some kind of job analysis. And we've been through a number of OFCCP audits, so we've won them, but we also have Alyssa as part of our team here. But now we got this hiring manager. They're not always going to be so open-minded. So you have to have some techniques to get hiring managers to redefine the job. And this is, I have a class that was starting, I think it's filled, the one in August might still be open, but I know the July class. We have two-hour modules. It's called the Recruiter Hiring Manager, I don't know, it's coordination class or something, cooperative class, but it's really to focus on this and do it with one of your hiring managers on a real assignment. The idea is managers sometimes don't want to do this. But I just asked, so here's the way I would take, so assume I'm taking an assignment with one of you. Hey, we really want a great person here. Let's find somebody with this job description. I said, well, and I sometimes would show the 4 buckets, the hiring A to Z buckets, but let's just say, hey, I know you want to hire a top 10, 15% person, but what am I going to tell a person that this is really a top 10 or 15% opportunity? What does a person need to do to be considered a top 10% person? Now, managers sometimes, that's just one ploy. It doesn't always work. Then I just say, what does a person need to do to be real successful in this job? Sometimes I just ask them flat, but sometimes I actually know. When I did the thing with this product manager in Russia, I knew this is a company that's launching games throughout Europe, online games throughout Europe. I said, obviously, they're coordinating with a lot of different people, right? Oh, yeah. I said, who do they coordinate with? So they got to put product specs together. Who's your key developer? There's a group in Korea and South Africa. Oh, okay, they got to put this together. What's the key thing? Oh, it's managing to the timeline. Okay, what's the breaker with the time? Oh, it's translation and breaking the game. Okay, so very quickly, but I put a rough template together, and all he had to do was clarify it, because I knew what the job was. And he instantly knew that I knew. We did another spot for a business development person. And I kind of already knew what the job was. He did part for a lawyer, did part for an accountant, did part for email direct marketing person. So all these jobs were exactly the same jobs everywhere. You kind of know what they need to do. So I just talk to people. Well, I've been around a lot of years, so I don't. But if I was you guys, I would just talk to people who already do the job and find out what do the best people do differently than the worst people, and then go to the hiring manager. Hey, I think this is what they need to do, right? I know we're launching this new product line. This is going to take the lead on this product line, right. And if you're in the staff meetings, you kind of could lead them through it. Then I had, oh, I don't have time. I heard you guys say that. Don't have time. Don't have time. Don't have time. I've never heard that one before. I said, so I've got a great, so let me just ask you this question, hiring manager. I find a great candidate this afternoon, great candidate. In fact, I got to want to show a few of them to you. And I get this candidate who wants to talk to you on the phone, real top performer. And the first question I'm going to ask you within 5 minutes is, what is the big stuff you want me to work on? Or if I was to take this job, what's some stuff I'm going to be working on? And you're going to tell them you don't have time? Well, I didn't say that, but you should know. I said, yeah, but I got to convince these people. I kind of know in general, but I don't know specifically. I got people on the phone who are passive candidates, got multiple opportunities, aren't going to spend the time. I need some information to get them engaged, some real tangible information. Oh, well, they're going to be working this, this, and that. This is important. The intake meeting is so, so important. This is where you're training, taming, coaching your managers. Then before you get out of there, you might even want to start this. Hey, I know you want a top 10% person. I got 20 people here. I just went through LinkedIn Recruiter. I got these 20 people. I want to put an email together to them, but I want to put something compelling. Why would a top person want this job? And all these people are currently fully employed. None of them are probably looking at all. They'll probably get a counter offer if they start looking to look at other things. So I need something real meaty to get them engaged here. So sometimes I put managers on the defensive right away, which is a good technique to start controlling the conversation. That's part of pushing on a rope, guys. It took me a lot of years to learn how to push on a rope, but that's one way to do it, is put the hiring manager on the defensive. All of a sudden, oh, I got it. They're pulling on the rope. All of a sudden, the rope gets tight. Interesting concept. But let me tell you guys, if you don't know the job, you're setting yourself for a total indirect process. You just don't know what you're looking for, and you're just going to go around in circles, and hopefully one of the circles overlaps with what you're looking for. Well, why do that? Define the work you want up front. And then this idea of, hey, what's your toughest thing here? For the lawyer, let me give you kind of an interesting story. I said, because the recruiter had too many things to work on, so I told the VP of Business Development there, I said, what's your toughest deal? No, the business development person. What's the bottom line, the most important thing this person needs to do? And they said, engage with international folks, C-level officers, major companies, entertainment companies, game companies, distribution companies around the world, and put together $3 to $5 million deals. And the person is probably going to put half a dozen or a dozen of those together a year. I said, okay, but the core thing is negotiating with C-level officers. So I told the recruiter, when you engage with a person, and I said, I said to the VP, so if we find someone who's engaged, who's got a $2 to $3 million deal, you at least see the person. You say, oh, yeah, absolutely. So I then told the recruiter, as part of your screening, is just ask them, before you go any further, just ask the person what's their biggest deal they've ever negotiated. It doesn't even matter if it's relevant. I just want the biggest deal, even if it wasn't with the same type of people. They can negotiate that kind of big deal that involves a lot of international stuff. They're in the game. Well, that's how you and they said, sure I would. It was like a no-brainer. Now, I'll ask Alan's question in a minute here. And this is where I think you've got, I'm going to talk about this. Don't rely on your employer brand, guys. That's okay for a 22-year-old or 24-year-old. The employer brand is not going to be great for someone who's 30 years old who's on a career mission. It might be important to get them noticed, but they're really going to look at, hey, what work am I doing? So it might help, but it's not going to, it's just at most. And I really think when you look at the demographics of the impact of the employer brand, you'll discover it's great for an entry-level person or someone to get their feet wet. It's less great for those who are really achievers, and it might be okay for people who are in the middle third who are looking for security, but I think, and that you have a tendency to follow the who does it. You just got to do some kind of analysis. Now, here's the other point I have is trade-off skills with the achiever pattern, which I'll describe in a minute, because I think it's important. The idea is, would you see a high potential person even if they're a little bit off? And I want to describe that, and then develop a clone and multiply. So I want to kind of go through this achiever pattern, but the idea is if you, in fact, pull this off, you will turn your clients and hiring managers into pussycats. They will turn into pussycats. You screw it up and send in a bad candidate, you're back to square one, guys. You just lost it. So you have a responsibility here to find people who can meet it. They'll define the job, but you now have a responsibility to deliver. So you think 3 to 4, I have some other rules about the 3 to 4 that recruiters have to fill. It's not an easy standard to make, but it's possible if you're controlling the process. Recognizing that you can't push on a rope. Can't push on the other advisors on the team. You can't push on the rope that all your candidates have behind the person. Candidates don't make the decision alone. They don't make the, they don't make the, they talk to their spouse, their family. Relocation involves dozens of people, family, grandparents, so close associates, co-workers. You got all these people. You got a lot of people you're controlling, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you don't even have a chance. Pure random luck. So here's some typical examples of performance objectives. Complete the project by a certain period of time. For sales, it's, hey, within 6 months, make quota 90% of the time. Work with a team project. Hey, work with product marketing to put the product spec together. Make sure it gets approved by all the participants, including engineering, operations, marketing, and recruitment, advertising, or the agency. What does the person do first? Oh, they're going to figure out what the problem is and put a plan together. They're going to upgrade the team. Whatever it is, they do stuff. This is objective criteria. 5 years of skills is objective, but it's not meaningful. There's no statistical correlation unless you've done a serious statistical correlation with it and prove that, yeah, that's what they need. We can't violate that. Well, then it's valid. And it's not that valid, but it's at least reasonably valid. Okay. Let me ask this question. This is a good time to stop before I get into it. I just want to kind of go through very quickly the interviewing and the achiever pattern and the cloning. That's what we want to do here to show how we can tame managers. I see a number of good questions coming up, JJ. Anything there that's worthy of group engagement or?
Yeah. How do you address a hiring manager who's stuck in the old school skills and experience and just not able to make that leap into having and doing? How do you overcome that skills and experience rut?
Well, there's a lot of ways. I can't give you the complete answer here. And I think you can do it for 90% of the people. There's going to be 10 that just aren't going to get it. And they're just not good managers, so they shouldn't be. So first I'd say a third of the people who are good managers get it as of course. I mean, it's almost like a no-brainer. Thank you for finally pointing this out to me. Another third can be trained to do it and buy into it when they're okay, adequate. The other third probably aren't really very good managers anyway, the bottom third. And probably half of that group isn't going to get it. But let's assume you've got a group you can work with. Number one is first I go through this list. It actually does work. I mean, just try it. I've had everybody who goes through Recruiter Boot Camp has to get, if they want to get certified, has to do this. We've never had anybody who hasn't done this at least 90% of the time or find a manager, so they recognize it works. What I try to do, though, is if I had to just say the basic skill is just talk to good people who are already in the group or who already do this work. And I have the performance profile roughly filled in. So the manager doesn't have to go from 0 to 80%. The manager has to go from 60% to 80%. So it's just editing the profile as opposed to starting from scratch. That, to me, is probably the best way to do it for everybody. It just gets them into the game. And it only takes, and you can just do it piecemeal. Hey, give me the 1 or 2 big things a person's going to work on. I got somebody on the phone I'm talking with. That's the one question. Oh, just give me some. I assume it's going to be the person going to be working on this project and this project. No. Okay, great, got it. So then you can do it in these short bursts of questions back and forth of what do they do. But if you don't know what they're doing, how can you engage a person? How can you write advertising? How can you screen a person? I mean, just think of what you don't. If you don't have it, you got nothing. Now, I, as a third-party recruiter, I refuse to do a search. In fact, that's how I made most of my business. My greatest business was creating this performance profile, going around the country, speaking to all these different business groups, the hiring managers, and say, hey, here's how we should define work. If you want to use my search firm, we're going to do this. In fact, I'll do a performance profile for you at no cost. It was a fox in a hen house. Every manager, we probably did it 10, 20,000 managers, always had more than enough searches to handle. Those people like the process. And I said, hey, if you don't want to do it, I'm okay with that, but I just can't do the search. So I still walk away, and I have a process that I implement, and the way I do my search is you do my process. And if you don't want to do it, I'm okay with that, but I can't do the search. Because shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If you don't know the job, you'll never get there. You're just wasting your time. But now let's assume we got them going here. And I want to kind of this is still engaging with hiring managers. What do you think the typical accuracy of a typical hiring manager interview? Just what's the accuracy of a typical hiring manager interview? They're interviewing a candidate for an hour or so. How accurate that is in predicting that candidate's ability to do the work. So let's just stuff in the green. So let's just make it a little bit doing the stuff in the green, which is the performance profile. So Brenda says 50-50. 50-50. Yeah, 50. Well, yeah, it's actually 57%. Somehow it's a little bit better than 57. Yeah, Roger, of course. Roger, just so you guys know, put 57. He's only been through this course 7 times. Here's why. We don't know the job. How could it possibly be? It's got to be 50-50 when you think about it. It's got to be pretty bad, because if you don't know the job, it's just problematic if you're going to find a person. Now, you might find a person who's competent to do the work, but you might have a person who's motivated to do the work. So yeah, you can hire someone. I said it's probably more accurate from a competency standpoint, from execution, doing the work, probably less accurate. We tend to overvalue first impressions. We don't know what the job is. We don't know what the environment is. We don't know what the manager is. We don't know what the team is. We don't know what the culture is. So if you don't have all of those fit factors, you're just guessing. We tend to overvalue intuition. I like the person. I don't like the person. Couldn't fit here. Great fit. Yeah, can you do the work? I don't know, but a great fit. Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, but never get the project done on time. It doesn't matter. He's brilliant. Yeah, but the project doesn't even require brilliant. It doesn't matter. He can do it. We just look at a few factors, all the full range. There's so many things going on. So even if you get your sourcing metrics right, pushing them through is an equal challenge. So in our process, and I as a recruiter, again, my shortest distance is a straight line, and you can't push on a rope. I got to control the front end and the back end. So we've created an interviewing model that part of our recruiting, part of our training includes not only sourcing and recruiting, but also interviewing, assessment, and closing. So here's my basic model. If you follow this rule, if you from now on never hire anybody who doesn't have follows the hiring formula, you'll be a huge success, guys. Here's my formula for hiring success. Got to have talent to do the work and technical ability or potential. You got to have management ability, which is organizing, planning, getting the results done, making it happen on time, but all the organization, planning, prioritizing, all that kind of stuff that goes along with that. You got to be able to work with comparable teams, that whatever people are, cooperating, influence, coaching, yada, yada, yada. And you got to be good at, you got to think through problems. Hey, sometimes you don't have all the information. How would you solve it? So you got to think, you got to have talent, you got to have management skills, you got a team, and you got to think. Now, all of this, and I call all the things on the top, all the things on the top, generic competencies. You got to have that stuff and motivation. But the reality of it is, it's stuff on the bottom that determines success or not. Does this person want to do the work you want done, which is the performance profile? So that's where, if you don't define the work, how is it possible you're going to find a candidate who's going to do it? So they might actually hire somebody, guys. So we hired somebody, but is it the right person? You're just thinking it from your literally, I don't want to say selfish, but it is, hey, we get a person hired, we're in good shape. Yeah, but that's not really from a company standpoint. You want to hire a good person. So you got to think about what's the job. So this is where if you want to train a manager, you got to get who are really fighting it. When they look at this formula, of course I got to define the job. I mean, it's so logical. If they don't get this part right, you got to say, what are you doing being a manager? But the job, there's always this situational leadership between the manager and the. Why do people? In fact, write this into the chat area. Why do good people leave companies, or why do they underperform? So why do otherwise good people leave companies or underperform? Type that in the chat. Yeah. Number one, they don't like the job, they don't like the manager, they don't like the culture. They're not learning. Whatever it is, it's something to do. I don't like the job, I don't like the manager, I don't like, I mean, there was a study that came out. You might want to even check Project Oxygen by Google. It defines all the stuff on the bottom here, guys. The reason people underperform is they don't like the job, they don't like the manager, they don't fit with the company. So you got to take that into account. And collectively, that determines motivation. Which I think Lowry just put in lack of motivation. And this is where I have a real problem with behavioral interviewing, guys. Tell me when you've been motivated. Every one of you guys has been motivated. You can come up with 10 examples of when you went the extra mile. But that wasn't in this situation, in this job, of this manager, in this culture, under these circumstances, with these resources, and all this kind of stuff. So if you don't get this part right, the situational fit factors, you got nothing. So that's why I say just hiring somebody, which is, hey, I hired somebody in 2 weeks, great. The guy failed 6 months later, underperformed, so you got to hire a good person. So I look at this from the whole scheme of things. It's more than just getting someone hired. It's hiring a good person and having that person excel. We just got the why do good people underperform. So I want to kind of now go back to redefining the candidate. We've redefined the job. And literally, that was not unimportant. We redefined the job to be a performance profile. We have a methodology to say we're going to interview a candidate this way, but we got to redefine the candidate a little bit. We got to get managers off the job description. Here's how I do it. So let me just kind of go through our basic structure and give you an idea. I got to go through the basic structure of our interview. When I suggest in all our training, every single training we do, we have 3. We got Recruiter Bootcamp, we got LinkedIn Masterclass, we got the Hiring Manager Partnership. We go through an interview. First, you're going to look at the candidate's skills and experience. Then you're going to look for what I call the achiever pattern. The achiever pattern is this person in the top 25% of his classification. I will show you, I'll kind of give you some hints on how to do it. Critical point that you recruiters need to know when you're looking at a LinkedIn profile resume. You got to look for the achiever pattern. Then what we do is as you the recruiters say, hey, does a person have the core traits? If they have skills and experience in the achiever pattern in some balance, we'll look, hey, they basically have the core traits and meet at least the minimum requirements for the job, do some kind of $2 to $3 million deal. Then we look at the jobs we really get. If we decide to keep on going, each of there's checklists off. We throw people out if they don't make it. We bring them in if they do. We then look at the job-specific factors, the job manager and the culture, and then motivation squared to do the actual work we want. So we have a whole course on how to pull that off. But I want to just kind of do skills and experience achiever pattern to show you how we can redefine a candidate and get the manager to buy in. I review the resume, determine how active or passive the candidate is. If the candidate's passive, I need to add an exploratory step. I got to slow it down a little bit. I look for the achiever pattern, the major decision point. An achiever pattern is this. So let me kind of define it. An achiever pattern is someone who's in the top 10, 15, 20, 25%, but has less skills than on the job description. And this is a real significant point. In the achiever pattern, and in our classes, we show you exactly how to identify it, and we go make you find something. But typically what it is, it's things in a candidate's resume or LinkedIn profile that would indicate the person's in the top half of the top half. Progressing very fast. Getting external recognition for doing good work or internal recognition. Sales could be Rookie of the Year, club, whatever it is. For engineers, it's probably writing some patents, being assigned to big projects. For CPA, when I talked to a CPA, it was 2 to 3 years, which I did for 5 years. The best CPAs always got assigned the toughest clients. These are 24-year-olds. So I just asked the candidate who I was talking to at the time. I haven't talked to many in a long time, but hey, what projects did you get assigned to? What clients you get assigned to? Why? I knew right away. If they got assigned the easy clients, they weren't very good. If they got assigned the tough clients, they were very good. Didn't take no brain science to pull that one off. Logical. If someone is in Procter & Gamble as an undergrad, came from Purdue, and within 6 months was put on the MBA fellowship program at Harvard, they're a good person. If someone's been assigned an Extreme Blue project at IBM, they're a good person. If they get a grant in neuroscience, they're a good person. There are things that tell you very quickly. It doesn't take any rocket science. It just takes some kind of insight to say, oh, is this a good person or not? Now, here's the big thing. And I asked this question for the last, let's say this. Everybody in Russia, I did 2 high-tech firms in Silicon Valley with hiring managers, engineers, salespeople, marketing people, everybody, every function, big high-tech company. You all heard of it. I won't tell you the company. I won't tell you the company in Russia either. So in the last 6 weeks, I've asked over 100 managers this question. Would you be willing to see someone who is a little bit light on the skills, but was a clear achiever, high potential person, but they weren't a perfect fit for the job because they were light in experience? What do you think 100% of the people, 100, not even any question, would you see a high potential person if the person was a little bit light on skills and experience? What do you think they all said? They all said, of course. I would love to see him. That's how we're going to build our company. And I said, well, you guys got to now coach these people. Oh, I'm willing to do it for those kind of person. I said, but you'll never see these people. They said, what do you mean? You'll never see them. Because your recruiters don't know that. Because you're posting skills and experience and eliminating people who have the achiever pattern because they're looking for lateral transfers. They're desperate. They have an economic need for your job. And your recruiters are just checking off the box description. And you won't see these people. They got to fight you. They got to fight like heck to get you to see this high potential person. So I said, I want you guys to look at your recruiters. They're all in the room and tell them you would see that person. That was probably the pivotal moment of all our training. Those chills through the room. It just changed everything. So let's think about this. And I ask the next question. Would you modify the job to leverage a person's strengths or hire a person, which better? Modify the job a little bit to leverage a person's strengths or hire a person to fill a predefined role? What's easier? And everyone said, of course we'd modify the job a little bit. I said, that's the direct route. Find a great person who's a little bit off and modify the job. Maybe they can handle the job because it's stretch and experience. Regardless, now you get high potential people to find a needle in a haystack, exactly those skills, exactly, think about it. You got exactly, that's the catch-22. We screen out people unless they have all the skills, so including the high achievers, because that's the whole point of high achiever. They're growing fast, they don't have all the skills. The best people have less experience. Let's be real frank. The best people always get promoted in bigger projects. That 2-year accountant handling a big project at a big entertainment company way over his or her head. Most people would need 4 or 5 years to handle that, but they gave it to the 2-year person because they knew the person could do it. So the best people always get assigned to bigger projects at tougher projects, so they never have enough experience. So you're avoiding, by focusing on year one or day one and before year one, you're eliminating the high achievers. And even with the skills, if they had them all, they're not looking for a lateral transfer. So that's why I get candidates, oh, I'll redefine a candidate. Oh, yeah, good point. I mean, it's like, once you go through the, now I don't, actually I do talk like I'm actually talking with you guys. That's the way I talk to people in Russia in the class. I probably actually talk that way on my clients one-on-one, but I wouldn't use my style, guys. It's kind of New York in your face, and I grew up in New York. I worked in manufacturing. I've had rivets, hot rivets, and castings thrown at me, and I rode a truck through a union line. I kind of love that stuff, but that's not, I'm not going with my style. A more diplomatic style is probably appropriate. But then you got to clone the candidate. So here's another way to do it. So this is how you get managers to redefine the candidate and redefine what they're looking for. First off, you might even want to say, hey, you guys, this job description isn't really a job description. It's really a person description. Nothing about this is the job. It's all about 5 years of this degree, this academics, this background, these competencies. That's a person. That's not a job. Let's define the job. Oh, that's interesting. So now you've got a rough job, which is the performance profile. I said, let's go in on LinkedIn and see if we can find somebody who can do this job. Now, I would actually suggest you do this ahead of time. This is a setup, guys. This is a setup. Your job is to find a clone who's a world-class person who absolutely is lighter than what's on the job description. You have to do this. A person has to be lighter. But you can still do it real time anyway, even though you've done your homework. So let's assume I was looking for a project manager in Python, software language, and they had to have Agile or Scrum background. So what I do, here's my keyword search in LinkedIn, not tough search, Agile or Scrum. So you probably should know this. So in our training, we actually train you on how to do basic Boolean, but being clever at Boolean too. So I needed project manager and Python. And maybe in parentheses you don't need to put the and, but I do it anyway. And then I also wanted I put a very simple high achiever point here, is just award or honors. Just award or, because if they have anything good, they probably have the word award or honor. You have distinctive service award, this honor, they put that in there. So that's kind of a cool, as simple as it gets, that's a good achiever term. So I looked for a person. Now I found 19 people who had that criteria, and I think it was, where was I located? Up in Northern California. I found this guy, Ben Henry. Cool guy, technical program manager at Google. So I've already set this up. So I'm talking to the hiring manager, hey, you need this person, you need 6 years. Well, this guy Ben's only got 4 years, but this guy looks great. That guy looks awesome. Oh yeah, I'd see him. No, he's certified Scrum Master too. Oh my God, Python Agile. Oh my God, this guy's world class. Yeah, but he doesn't meet the job description. What do you mean? Yeah, he's not going to have 8 years of this. And, oh no, I'd see this guy. Absolutely see this person. Oh, great. Let me see if I can recruit him. But I have to know what he needs to do. What's the person need to do? I can't. This guy's not looking. He's world class. He's at Google. He's not going to come. Oh, he's got to do this, this, and this. Guys, cloning starts setting the stage. This is how you push on a rope. You just start understanding how people make decisions. Taming hiring managers is the first part. And then when he says this, let's be real frank, guys. This is what I taught my 72 hours to get prospects. Piece of cake. Right here, I got people also viewed Ben Henry as what? All these other people just like Ben Henry. Wow, I got Robert, I got Joe, I got Liz, I got Steve, I got Justin. And I can probably connect with Ben Henry. And if I can connect with Ben Henry, I still have to do that. I can also search on his connections in LinkedIn Recruiter. So now rather than, so let's assume Ben Henry doesn't want to look, I'll just go into Ben. Hey, Ben, you know, we're now connected. I know we talked last week about the search. Love to, you know, now connected. I saw 4 people in your background who could be pretty interesting. What about Bill? What about Mary? And what about Sally? Oh, no, Sally's great. She actually worked here a couple of years ago. She's off. She might be the person. Why don't you call her? Guys, getting to 72 hours is a piece of cake. Prospects. You got to be a good recruiter. You have to know your job. You got to not push on. You can't push on a rope, and you got to know that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But cloning helps you redefine the candidate. And here's all similar. Here's the 99 similar profiles to Ben. If you can't find the person in 72 hours, guys, what's going on here? It means you're not a very good recruiter. And to me, let me make this statement here. This is our whole class, 8 hours on this. Most people look at LinkedIn as a list of 160 million names. And they send emails to those messages and all this kind of stuff. That's an indirect message, hoping that one of those 160 million people find you. That's, I call it out-in networking. I'm looking at in-out networking, which is inside-out. Is, hey, I'll find the best person, clone that person, connect with that person, inside out, and search on that person's connections. Instantly, I got a warm referral. Hey, Sally, I just talked to Ben Henry, suggested you were a world-class person, didn't think you were looking, but he thought the opportunity I had here was at least worthy of your 5 to 10 minute discussion. Oh, how's Ben doing? Great, good. Yeah, happy to talk, Lou. Guys, that's recruiting. But you got to start by defining your candidate. You have to start by becoming a partner with your hiring manager. Most recruiters have little influence. Not all their candidates are seen. They have little job knowledge. They're not great at making assessments. They waste a lot of people's time. I changed the rules. That to me is a relationship, a vendor relationship, as indirect as you possibly could get. You want to become a partner and go direct, you'll at least be 2 times more effective, maybe more. You have to know the job. It's not even an option. You must. You have to be as good an interviewer as your hiring manager. In our training, we show you how, but it's not much different than figuring out that hiring formula. You make an agreement that every 100% of the people you present are seen. And if you need to see more than 4, you stop because somebody is doing something wrong. Then you got to close the deal, and you got to influence everybody else in the hiring team. The way I do it is I don't take the assignment to everybody who's, and we actually do this. When I do search, and I do a little bit, I want everybody who's making a decision to go through a mini training class. We review the performance profile, we review our assessment scorecard, and how we're going to interview the candidate. If they don't agree, I'm saying I can't do the search. We're going to waste our time. Surprisingly, they all agree because I have a process. This process actually does work. What a shock though. And some of you people will actually decide, hey, you're pretty good at this. You want to become a coach and train these people. You'll then be 3 times more effective. But the point is, guys, you can't push on a rope. You have to know the job. You have to become a partner. You have to be someone worth knowing. The hiring team, the candidate, and the hiring manager. Our training is all about that. This is the only commercial I'm giving here, and I'm going to open it up for some questions. Very short commercial. We want you to become a partner in our training program. We have a very cool learning center we put everybody on. Dashboard, it's got all the tools, all the content. We expect you to get certified. It's a full year of training. You pay one price, you get a full year. So if you go to Recruiter Bootcamp, you get a full year of Recruiter Bootcamp. If you get certified, you actually can go to LinkedIn Masterclass at no additional cost too. You can come to our online program, our live program, and if you get certified in performance-based hiring, you can actually come to all our LinkedIn programs. So we've got 16 or 20 hours of training, and you can come to it at no additional cost. 24/7 access, all the tools you need. In fact, I'd say our best tool, the coolest thing in the world, is when we have a video that you're going to send to your candidates. It tells you how to get candidates to get ready for the interview. 15-minute educational course for managers to prep. It helps them make sure they don't do something stupid, because that's another thing you got to control, guys. You can't push on a rope. You got to make sure your candidates do it right. You got to make sure your clients do it right. Everybody's got to do it right. So we created some tools for your candidates to make sure they do it right, and even we have tools for the candidates to make the right decision. we do control the whole process. The point is, if you want to hire great people, you got to have great jobs. You got to think about talent scarcity. You've got to redefine the job and make it great. You got to redefine the candidates so managers are looking for people who are good, not for people who have a bunch of skills. You got to clone your candidates so you can find them quickly. You got to redefine the assessment. The hiring formula and the performance-based interview actually allow you to increase your assessment accuracy far greater than your managers. Because let me just say this, you can never out-yell a manager, but you can out-fact the manager. Then you have to redefine the candidate decision. Basically, you got to control the process from beginning to end. That's how you ensure that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Find a slate of 3 to 4 qualified prospects in 72 hours and stop if they need to see more than 4 people. Okay, so let me stop now. We do have, if you go to our website, you'll discover that we have an audit of a training program or a sneak peek of all our training. I think, JJ, what's the date of our next sneak peek? I think it's 2 weeks or so.
July 26th, I believe, is the next sneak peek.
Okay, JJ will check it out as we're doing. So any questions, JJ, that you saw come up here? Or,
Yeah, we do have one here from Christy. How do you, it's essentially the moving job spec syndrome. How do you overcome when a manager changes their mind after you've already presented great candidates?
Well, that's actually the reason why you have to define it ahead of time. That's not to say it won't happen, Christy and everybody, and that happened to me all the time. That was probably one of the reasons they change it, because they don't know what they're looking for. So what you got to do is I can't say you're going to totally prevent it, but obviously they did not think your 3 to 4 candidates were great. There's something about what they saw that's not what we're looking for. So what they did is they used the interviewing process to help them define the job. That's one of these things that you set yourself up for that. Now, let me just say, I set myself up for that all the time, so I don't want to minimize it. That's why you have to do your best job to get it done ahead of time. The reason they did is they didn't agree to it ahead of time. You didn't get the hiring manager's boss to agree to it ahead of time. You didn't get the other people on the team to agree to it ahead of time. I tell people, I will not start until we all agree to what we're looking for, because I know you'll change it. We all do it. We've all been through that situation. So it's, again, one of those time wasters. So that, to me, as I said, if you don't know what you're looking for at the beginning, you'll never find it. You will change, and then they'll find it. Oh, I'll find it. Here's a great candidate. We'll change the job to meet this candidate's needs, which is okay, but you're just scrambling in the dark. You're going around in circles. Still a very fair question, but I'd say starting the basics, and you'll control 70 to 80% of it. You won't control it all.
Okay, and one more question regarding levels. This seems like a really good process for corporate recruiters that work on higher level salaried positions, but does it also apply to third-party recruiters or entry-level positions?
Excellent question. JJ, is that a real question or is that a setup?
No, that was a real question that was much earlier in the program. I'm just asking
so
it now.
Let me answer that. We have used this process. Now, initially, I only started. Now, first, I was a third-party recruiter, so I started this as a third-party recruiter, both contingent and retained. I developed the process, and my marketing was I had the process. We have third-party recruiting firms around the country now. In fact, we've got one next week in Northern California that we're going to certify in this process. We've got groups in Canada that send all the recruiters to it. So we have a lot of third-party recruiters who are marketing this, and they help us because we now have third-party recruiters. We can be advocates for us, and also we can advocate them as it. So obviously it works for any recruiter, third-party or not. That's how I started in the business, and we're training lots of companies to do it as well internally. So there's no difference whatsoever there. With respect to level, my initial reaction was I would have thought, this is 15 years ago, that it would not have worked for anything less than a 3-year person or more. However, in that interim period, we've helped Chuck E. Cheese, In-N-Out Burger hire entry-level people. We helped the YMCA using exactly the same process hire 100,000 16-year-olds for a camp counselor. So it does work for everything else. Obviously a slightly different job, but we know what a good camp counselor does with 16 at a YMCA camp. We know exactly what it is. We know what it takes to be successful. We know exactly how to interview it. But before that, they looked at, hey, are these people friendly? Are they attractive? Can we date them? And can they play in the softball team? That wasn't the criteria we came up with. There was responsibility dealing with the kids, planning ahead. So yes, it works for every single job, not anywhere in the world. Call centers, sales reps, works in India, works in China, works in Russia, works in not a single country we haven't worked with in a single job assignment, from entry level to part-time job in a restaurant to chairman of the board of a Fortune 50 company. Works around universal. And just think about it. It's human nature. Good people are good when they're 16. They have things they got to do. We know what a good camp counselor needs to do. We know what a good board of directors needs to do. We know what a project manager needs to do. This was, I don't know, okay. Now somebody else says, how does LinkedIn Talent Finder compare to Recruiter? Very good question. I was asked this yesterday. And my sense is, Cynthia, because I have LinkedIn Recruiter, Professional Services, and Recruiter, if you can search on your connections, and I don't think you can in Talent Finder. I don't think you can, where you have to pick a person who you're connected to, 1-degree connection. That person has to have their connections open, and you have to be able to search on their connections. You'll come up with a search screen on the left-hand side that allows you to search on their connections. That is huge for LinkedIn Recruiter. And I think because somebody was on our class yesterday who had Talent Finder and she couldn't do it, she got LinkedIn Recruiter Professional Services, and she said, unbelievable. She said, I closed 3 searches in 2 weeks. I found candidates from my prior candidates. I just started looking at their connections and asked them about people. Rather than asking, who do you know, who's great, you just said, hey, is Bill great, is Mary great, is Sally great? Remember, I just searched on Ben Henry's connections that way. And I don't know Ben Henry, so you can call him up. He looked pretty cool to me, though. Looked world-class guy, so probably is a world-class guy, but neither here nor there. That, I think, is the difference. So you have to talk to your LinkedIn rep for that. My sense is that what I've defined it is probably correct. Okay, any last questions? We're over time, guys. Hopefully this was valuable. You're going to get an email to us. If you have any questions, email your questions to info@AdlerConcepts. I'll try to do my best to answer them. I had one this morning. Somebody was setting up a college recruitment program in Northern California. I had 3 minutes. I came up with a point. He said, oh, my God, I never thought of that. And so I actually do try to answer all these questions. Yeah, that was a question. How do we assess our training without the penalty of time differences? We're actually thinking of this, whoever asked that question, of coming up with a late California time, because I know we're doing something in India. I think we're doing that. No, I guess we're doing it around the world, where I'm starting at 5 o'clock in the morning California time. It's a little bit early, but we're getting everybody around the country. So it's inconvenient for everybody. So that's what we're doing. So we actually kind of modify it. If you can get a group of recruiters together that meets a minimum standard for us, we'll do it almost any time around the world. And I do get tired a little bit. But hopefully that was great, guys. Good questions. I hope you found some value here, and I hope you find some great candidates and can tame your managers. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lou. Have a great afternoon, and we hope to see you on a future Adler Group webinar.